Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 11th day of February 2022. I'm David Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service. I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got hazardous weather graphic and winter storm warning for the eastern North Gulf Coast and Yakutat. That's out for a few more hours till early this evening. Picked up anywhere from 9 to 13 inches of snow in the greater Yakutat area in the last 12 hours, with about that working out to a water equivalent of 1¼ inches, which translates to about 12 or more inches of snowfall. Anyway, out to the west, winter weather advisory out this evening for the Kuskokwim Delta, mostly west of Bethel for blowing snow, and low visibilities reduced to a half mile or less at times, and the gusty winds of anywhere from 30 to 35, some cases possibly as high as 40 miles an hour, and 30 to 40 mile an hour winds there for the eastern Norton Sound area, Unalakleet, Stebbins, St. Michael up to Norton Bay, bringing wind chills down to the 40 to 55 degree below zero range, and that's out for tonight. And also St. Lawrence Island, same thing, wind chill advisory tonight for gusty winds and wind chills running pretty low, as low as 50 degrees below zero. And from there, satellite imagery showing a lot of moisture moving right on up into the northern Gulf Coast, eastern North Gulf Coast, and some of that's sliding into the Copper River Basin and starting to taper off this afternoon. Several inches of snow, 2 to 4 inches falling along the Copper River there. Copper Center, Gulkana, and those areas, and then the rain shifting into the northern panhandle, but only about 1 to 2/10 of an inch, Juneau and Sitka today. Kodiak, same thing, about 2/10 of an inch of rainfall as well there. And as the clouds, you can see the big mass of clouds starting to break up there as it shifts northeastward and eastward. And then the frontal boundary there extending to the southwest of the panhandle really becoming diffuse, kind of breaking up, holes showing up in it, so not really too moisture laden there. But southwest flow will continue to pull moisture up into the panhandle for tonight. Out to the west, low pressure just east of the Pribilof Islands there, producing some areas of snow showers down to the Fox Islands and back out over the western Aleutians, mostly cold and dry, northern Bering Sea there over the sea ice covered waters, up into the Bering Strait, and temperatures quite cold, minus 30s north slope this afternoon, coming up from 40 to 45 below zero in the low, some areas of the northwest interior. Upper Yukon Valley, Chuck-Itzig, in the mid-minus 40s for overnight lows, Beaver in those locations, and mostly clear skies, light winds. A little breezy, though, over portions of the interior, especially higher elevation, seeing gusts 20 to 30 miles an hour. Then gusts of 30 to 40 miles per hour at Unalakleet today down into the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. Mostly the Yukon Delta, less wind over the Kuskokwim Delta, but a little more in the way of snowfall there. Areas of light snow over much of southern Alaska, with that front pushing up toward the North Gulf Coast and into the Panhandle with the heaviest precipitation again right around the Yakutat area. Areas of rain and snow, showers or periods of from Kodiak Island all the way back into the western Aleutians, mostly snow out toward Shemya there with the colder northeast winds blowing, and back up toward the Pribilofs. For tonight, that front moves inland and keeps it cloudy and milder over southern Alaska. Rain and snow along the coast, and mostly snow, especially with elevation over the inland areas, the light snow pushing all the way up to and beyond the Yukon River there, but staying clear and cold. North Slope, Brooks Range, St. Lawrence Island, western Seward Peninsula. Pick up a few clouds there along the Arctic coast. Low pressure western Aleutians keep snow showers going. Shemya and Attu from the Komodorsky Islands actually into Adak and Atka, really scattering out though toward Atka Island, and maybe dry conditions for Unamak Island. Risk of snow showers for Dutch Harbor and Alaska. Snow showers likely for the Pribilofs and the Alaska Peninsula in toward Bristol Bay. And moving on, forecast for Saturday. Another system there over the southwest interior keeps in the frontal boundary, Arctic front, just north of the Susitna Valley along the Alaska Range, and areas of light snow from the southern slopes of the Brooks Range all the way down across the Yukon River into the Kuskokwim Valley to Bristol Bay, south central Alaska, chance of snow or snow showers, and mixed precipitation down toward the coastline into the Panhandle. A drier day tomorrow. Moisture starting to increase with that warm front farther to the southwest over the southern southeast coast late in the day, but generally light wind conditions and some areas not maybe precipitation free throughout the day. Same thing for the central eastern Aleutians, kind of a dry lull there. You can see pressure gradient tightening up with the next storm to the south of the western Aleutians that we'll see on Sunday pushes a pretty active frontal system with storm force winds into the southern Bering Sea and the western central Aleutians with good gales, 40 to 40 or 35 to 45 knot winds pushing into the Fox Islands, and increasing wind, rain, and snow for the Alaska Peninsula. Snow and blowing snow on the increase for the Pribilofs as those winds start to pick up out of the east and east-northeast, possibly reaching 30 to 40 miles an hour. And that same pattern, actually more windier, northeast winds possibly gusting 60 miles an hour or so for the western Aleutians, with snow and blowing snow out there shimmying that too. Up over the eastern interior, some leftover moisture there will produce a widespread area of clouds and some light snow, snow flurries or snow showers, definitely more of the snow shower, scattered snow shower variety for the western Alaska Range into the Copper River Basin. But north of the mountains, probably just periods of very light snow. Some areas could pick up an inch. Most areas will see less than that. Cloudy but dry, variable clouds for the north slope and the Arctic coast under Arctic high pressure. Stays cold over the western interior. And Bristol Bay, light winds, dry conditions, maybe some afternoon clearing. Kodiak Island looks to be mostly sunny, as does Cook Inlet and the Kenai Peninsula, with a risk of snow showers. Northern Cook Inlet, Manuska, Susitna Valley, and the Valdez area. Front also pushes rain northward there up into the Cross-Dixon entrance into the southern southeast coast. That low center southwest of the Queen Charlotte, it's not all that strong, about 1,006 millibars, so wind's really not going to be much of a factor. In fact, they stay pretty light. You'll probably see some clearing over the northern southeast coast and some sunshine during the day Sunday. Lows tonight for the Panhandle staying above freezing in the 30s to near 40 along the central coast. Mid-30s for your low for Yakutat, so warming up a little bit there. And single numbers, the Copper River Basin, 20 to 30 for the lows for the south central Alaska, south and east of the Alaska Range. Single numbers for the Kuskokwim Delta. And below zero from McGrath and Nikolai into the lower Yukon River Valley on out to Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, toward 20 below zero there. Looking for a low of about 8 for the Pribilofs and upper 20s for the central Aleutians. Lower 30s for the Fox Islands, 30 to 35 for the lows for the Alaska Peninsula, and 35 to 45 below Brooks Range on out to the North Slope and Arctic coast, and 20 to 35 below for the upper Yukon, Koyukuk, Kobuk Valley, and the northwest coast. Highs tomorrow rising up to above zero, 4 degrees. Might get up to 4 in Fairbanks for Saturday afternoon, and then the lower teens off to the east, and 10 for Eagle, staying below zero though to the north, and well below zero for the North Slope and the Arctic coast. Nome high 2 below, about 8 below for Savunga, and upper 20s to mid 30s for Bristol Bay. Temperature should push 40 for Kodiak in the afternoon, and also possibly Homer. Otherwise, upper 20s to lower 30s for south central Alaska. Highs in the lower to mid 40s for the southeast coast, and mid to upper 30s out over the Aleutians. But quite a contrast there just to the north. The Pribilofs holding at 11 degrees on the north side of the Arctic front, and 8 below zero for St. Lawrence Island. Sunday morning lows, 25 to 40 below again. Some areas on the North Slope Umiat Airfield could reach 45 below zero. That'll be the exception. Otherwise, south of the Brooks Range, shade below zero. Fairbanks staying above zero for Delta Junction, Eielson Air Force Base over toward Eagle, but Northway and Tok down to 8 below. And lower to mid 20s for south central Alaska, not too bad. Upper 20s toward Homer and Seward, 30 for Valdez. Lower 30s for the northern Panhandle, mid to upper 30s for your lows to the south, and right around freezing for the Aleutians, low down to 6 for the Pribilofs. Sunday afternoon highs, 20 to 35 below for the highs North Slope and the Arctic coast, but warming up in the interior there. You can see the Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley, Yukon Flats edging up towards zero, And Tanana rising to 3 above, and in the lower teens for Fairbanks and the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country, and upper 20s to mid 30s for south central Alaska.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather. VFR, Arctic coast, all the way down the central interior, marginal VFR. Southern Alaska turns into IFR, about the Alaska Range, across the Kuskokwim Valley, out west, Yukon Delta to Nunivak Island, into Bristol Bay, covering the North Gulf Coast and all of south central Alaska, Prince William Sound, right in across the entire southeast panhandle. And also some more IFR, Pribilof Islands, back to the northwest, wrapping in back around the western Aleutians. VFR, Adak, Atka to Nikolsky, and marginal for the Alaska Peninsula. For the afternoon, we've got IFR still holding on to the Pribilof Islands, and marginal VFR lifting northward, north of the Aleutians, still on the north coast of the Alaska Peninsula, but VFR south side, Chignik, Sand Point. And Kodiak, marginal VFR, but VFR, Fognak Island up into southern Cook Inlet, IFR, northern Cook Inlet, Matanuska, Sitna Valley, Kuskokwim Valley to the Yukon River, lower Yukon River, and then VFR, northern half of the state, eastern Alaska Range, either side there from the Wrangell Mountains up to Northway Tok, but definitely not to Eagle. They're right on the southern edge of the IFR band there. Southern southeast coast, IFR, VFR elsewhere, or marginal VFR elsewhere. Now we've got some VFR in the central panhandle for Sunday morning, marginal to the south, IFR up around Lynn Canal, marginal VFR North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound, and IFR northern Cook Inlet, all of Cook Inlet actually, into the Susitna, part of the Matanuska Valley, and IFR from Kuskokwim Bay northeastward, riding the Yukon River Valley there all the way up to the border toward Old Crow, Arctic Village, IFR for the Pribilofs, northern Bering, and some IFR now slipping on up into the west central Aleutians. And from there, going to the afternoon, good VFR, Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, and westward, across the Chukchi Sea, southward, Seward Peninsula, Yukon Kuskokwim Delta, into Bristol Bay and Kodiak Island, with VFR over the northern two-thirds of the southeast coast, and IFR for the Pribilofs, and IFR for Atka Island westward to Shimi and Attu. And for passes, Anatuvik, VFR, fighting a sneeze off. And for Adigan, VFR, Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR becomes marginal and windy IFR with, rainy IFR. Windy IFR as well. Isabel IFR turning toward marginal VFR, so improving conditions there. Probably by late morning and into the afternoon, possibly becoming VFR on the northern entrance in the latter part of the afternoon. Ventasta, marginal VFR to start, VFR to finish, and that'll probably include most of the afternoon. Tanita, IFR. Portage, IFR. Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR. Freezing levels at the surface up over the Copper River Basin, cutting down across western Cook Inlet through Bristol Bay, north of the Aleutians now. In fact, a fair distance north of the Aleutians, but still south of the Pribilofs, and we've got 2,000 to 6,000 foot freezing levels across the southeast coast, 8,000 over the Queen Charlottes. Icing, areas of light, isolated, moderate, rime, or mixed icing along the Yukon Kuskokwim River valleys there, right on up into the central interior, south of the Yukon Flats, kind of fading away as you head over toward the border. Another band, due to continued moisture flowing in off the Pacific, keeps icing threats elevated Prince William Sound into the northern and eastern panhandle, and then some more icing way out west over the Komodorski, starting to spill into the western Aleutians. Jet stream, we got westerly flow along and just north of the Aleutians there at 110 to 125 knots. Upper level low pressure over the central Bering Sea, and west-southwest flow 90 to 120 knots about over the southeast coast, strongest in the north. Lighter flow over interior Alaska, 9,000 feet, west-southwest 40 to 50 knots. Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, then across the Gulf, in across the Panhandle, pretty light down toward Dixon Entrance, but about 55 knots there near Burwash, and west-southwest 40 knots over the eastern interior, south of the Yukon River. 3,000 feet, southwest winds, 40 knots coming across the Aleutian Range, Shelikof Strait, and Kodiak Island into the Gulf and then fade away by the time it reaches the Panhandle. Northeast winds about 35 knots over the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island. Look for just some scattered light turbulence below surface to 5,000 feet. Lynn Canal, maybe Glacier Bay, also eastern Norton Sound, Norton Bay along the Lotto Hills to the Yukon Delta. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the...
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us once again is our good friend Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. He is here and has been here many times to talk to us about weather satellites and how those can help Alaskans understand our weather, how we can do better detection, keep more people safe from things even like volcanic ash. But today, Eric, you're going to talk to us a little bit more about weather satellites and how that can keep Alaskans safe and protect our property from wildfire, right?
That's right, Dave. Today's topic is where there's smoke, there's fire. And thanks for having us back again to Alaska
Anytime.
Weather. Well, weather satellites have a lot of different instruments on them. It turns out that the electromagnetic spectrum has a lot going on in it, and only one part of that is visible light, what we see.
Right.
Weather satellites, of course, report that. Today's topic is wildfires.
Okay.
There are some people who say that in Alaska in the summertime you don't have severe weather. These people are usually from Oklahoma or somewhere, and F5 tornadoes tend not to occur in Alaska.
Right.
People have also said what we do have in the summer. What is Alaska's severe summer weather can be hydrology,
Right.
flash flood and erosion in the mountains and things like that, and fires, wildfires.
Absolutely.
Those were here in 2004, certainly remember that. We've got an example here from 2014. Now, it was a quiet season overall, but in May, down on the Kenai Peninsula, we had a wildfire on the Funny River, and this is a satellite image from a polar orbiter that went right over Alaska, and we can see the plume of smoke coming out of that fire on the Kenai, curling down. It's caught in the wind.
Right.
It goes down toward Kodiak Island, curves around. You can see it circulating around a low-pressure system that's in the Gulf of Alaska.
It was a beautiful picture.
Oh my gosh.
Except there was a fire.
There's a fire there. The nice thing is with this satellite image, you can tell where the fire origin is, where
Right.
the smoke is coming from. And it's a color image. We're looking at the wavelength spectrum of about 0.4 to 0.7 micrometers or microns. That's what the human eye would see. If you were riding on the satellite and looked down, you could see this kind of an image.
Right.
So that's pretty nice. But it turns out there's more to the electromagnetic spectrum than just visible light.
Okay.
You've heard of infrared, ultraviolet, that kind of thing. If we move into longer wavelengths, let's go to one specifically, 3.7 microns.
Okay, 3.7.
Why worry about that one? Well, we've got an example here. 3.7, it turns out, happens to be very sensitive to a certain temperature range, temperatures where fires burn.
Okay.
And so we've got an example zoomed in a little more from that same Funny River fire down on the Kenai Peninsula, and we can see that you get up into a few hundred degrees Fahrenheit,
Right.
and that's where the colors are. We can see there on the Funny River fire to the west and to the east, almost a horseshoe shape there, is not only we're seeing where the fire is in a general sense, but specifically where it's the active fire
That is where
front.
it's burning right now.
And it's
Amazing.
3.7 microns is the important temperature there.
Okay.
That's right.
So this is really important to firefighters on the ground, people that are making plans and directing the firefighters on where they need to go and cut the trenches and keep people safe.
You know it. If you want to fight that fire, you got to know where it is.
Okay.
You got to know the leading edge. We've also got a movie loop, nothing quite like animating it in time.
Yeah.
You can see the fire spreading out over time with a succession of film or a succession of images. Now this is one channel, 3.7 micron. You know, we looked at that color smoke image before.
Right.
And that's actually a red, a green, and a blue. That's how you get color imagery. What if you took 3 different wavelengths in the infrared? You went from like 2.2 micron, 1.5 micron, up to 3.7. You mix them together, you get this other kind of color image, which is even a better way to sharply bring out the details of where that leading edge of the fire is.
Okay.
You'll note, though, in the infrared, guess what? We don't see the smoke. That's too bad. And on these movie loops, you can see the clouds go by. These channels can't see through clouds. The lesson is there's no one perfect solution. You got to have the visible, you got to have some of that infrared single 3.7 channel, some of the infrared mixing to help get a different perspective. Another one, we've talked before about a fun channel called the Day-Night Band.
Yes, one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, and in Alaska in the winter, it's great. We've got all this darkness. The Day-Night Band is so sensitive to seeing light. You can see features that otherwise aren't available. Now in Alaska, when you have a forest fire, it tends to be light out all the time.
Right.
It's our summer. But we can go down south to the Rim Fire in California in 2013. Now, okay, it was in California, not Alaska, but Alaskan crews went down to fight that fire, so we
Fair
can
enough.
talk about it here on Alaska Weather. Here we have a 3.7 micron channel shot of the rim fire, again kind of a horseshoe shape showing that active fire front down there, and then we'll look again to the day-night band, the visible light, and then you can see how the fire is all bright. You can see the active fire front and actually the city lights over there too. Turns out that the cities, while they're active in a social sense, are not really hot in a fire sense. So they don't show up in the 3.7 micron. They're not hot like a fire is, but the fire in the cities look the same from a visible light perspective. And a fun thing here too is that we can see the smoke plume going north from the rim fire on the day-night band. So if we were ever to have, like in 2004 in Alaska, you get dark at night, we still had an active fire season that year.
Right,
That was, you know, that really bad year. The day-night band didn't exist then, but if we had fires now in August, we could use it then. The lesson here is weather satellites, they offer many different wavelengths of light. Some are used for different purposes, and some of these we just looked at tonight are especially helpful here in Alaska to find and to track the behavior of these wildfires so the crews can go out there and do their jobs.
Sure, sure. So a satellite toolbox for the firefighting crews and the fire weather forecasters, and it just underlines how important satellites are, especially for Alaska and our mission for the National Weather Service to protect life and property, and also to enhance the national economy. So wonderful stuff there, Eric. And people can look at pictures like this anytime by going to gina.alaska.edu. You'll find images there all around Alaska at various times of the year, and not just about fire weather, but volcanic ash and smoke and anything else you want to check out. They're always beautiful pictures and always interesting to look at no matter what time of the day. Thanks again for joining us, Eric. We appreciate it and welcome you back anytime. For this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder. See you next time. And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Got some low concentration sea ice down around St. Paul Island and about halfway to St. George Island, but not quite there yet. So it looks like about 20-30 nautical miles away from St. George. Anyway, moving on to coastal water forecasts, we've got light winds along the outer coastline of the Panhandle tomorrow. On the south coast, southwest 15 knots, seas around 10 feet. North coast, west-southwest 15 to 20 knots, seas around 10 feet. Clarence Strait, light southeast breeze 15 knots, seas only at 3 feet. And small craft advisories for Stevens Passage, winds south 25 knots with 5-foot seas. And Lincoln on Glacier Bay, south winds 25 knots with gale force gusts of 40 knots, seas around 5 feet. They'll swing around to the north there from the northern inner channels on Sunday, only at about 20 knots, so with 4-foot seas. Central inside waters, north winds 15 knots, seas 3 feet, and Clarence Strait, east winds 15 knots with 3-foot seas. And for the coastline, winds will be north to northwest at 15 knots with seas running 7 to 8 feet. Northern Cook Inlet, light variable winds tomorrow. And for Prince William Sound, south winds 20 knots, seas 3 feet. Small craft advisories for the North Gulf Coast and the Barren Islands. Looking at southwest winds at 30 knots with seas around 12 to 13 feet. Southern Cook Inlet, small craft advisories, southwest winds 25 knots with 5-foot seas, and southwest winds 20 knots with 5-foot seas for Kamishak Bay. Outlook for Sunday, Northern Cook Inlet and Prince William Sound, variable winds, light and variable conditions. Winds at about 10 knots or less, seas less than 2 feet. Southern Cook Inlet, light west breeze at 10 knots, 3-foot seas, and 15-knot westerlies for Kamishak Bay. Barren Islands and the North Gulf Coast, west winds 20 knots, seas 6 to 7 feet. Kodiak Island, southwest winds 30 knots, good for small craft advisory, 7 to 13-foot seas for the day Saturday. Otherwise, the Alaska Peninsula, southwesterlies 20 to 25 knots, strongest on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, seas 6 to 11 feet, highest on the Pacific side of the peninsula. South winds 20 knots for Bristol Bay. And for Sunday, gale warnings from Cape Sarachev to Castle Cape there for the Alaska Peninsula. For southeast winds 35 knots. Actually, Cape Sarajevo all the way up to Sitkinak, we have the gale warnings out for southeast winds 35 knots. Otherwise, Kodiak Island, west-southwest 15 to 20 knots. Seas 3 to 7 feet there. Bristol Bay, brisk wind advisories northeast up to 30 knots, and easterlies 30 knots on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Fox Islands, west winds 15 to 20 knots, seas 6 to 8 feet for the day Saturday. Adak and Atka, southwest 15, seas 7 feet. Small craft advisories for the western Aleutians. South to southwest winds 30 knots, 10 to 14 foot seas. Storm warnings come into the central and western Aleutians, east-northeast 50 knots from Atka to Shimia. Seas anywhere from 20 to 32 feet, and gale warnings for the Fox Islands, southeast winds 40 to 45 knots. Southwest coast, brisk wind advisories for the Yukon Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island, north winds 25 to 30 knots, north winds 15 knots for the Pribilofs, and north 25 knots for St. Matthew Island, Kuskokwim Delta coast, looking at a west wind of 20 knots. And for Sunday, Norton Sound coming down from those 30-knot northerlies on Saturday to 15 knots Sunday. North 20 knots for St. Lawrence Island. Northeast 30 knots, brisk wind advisories for the southwest coast. And east 40 knots, gale warnings for the Pribilofs. Higher gusts for St. George Island and St. Matthew Island. Northeast winds 45 knots with 10-foot seas. Light variable winds for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, central and western coast, southwest at 10. Cape Beaufort to Wales, north winds 20 knots. And for Sunday, Wales to Cape Beaufort, northwest winds 15 to 20 knots. Central and western Arctic coast, actually the entire stretch of the coastline up there, west or west-southwest at 10 knots. Pretty light wind conditions. And for tonight, high pressure, may give it the light winds tonight also up there for the north slope out to the Arctic coast with variably cloudy skies, mostly along the coastline. Otherwise, clear and cold, but milder as you get into the cloud cover and the areas of snow pushing up into the central interior from the south. Rain and snow for the south-central Alaska area into the Panhandle. Snow showers for the Pribilofs down to the Alaska Peninsula. Widespread areas of snow and snow showers picking up from about Adak westward. And then for tomorrow, more snow over the southern central interior, warmer with rain along the North Gulf Coast. Drier on Sunday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.